Hello and welcome to an Infinity the Game battle report. In this game we're playing Tohaa against the USAriadna Ranger Force and the scenario is the Armory. This battle report goes out to channel supporter Tomaz who asked for a Gorgos battle report. He said that recently he's been forcing the Gorgos a whole lot and has found that it actually fits into Tohaa's strengths better than he'd originally expected. So Tomaz, thank you very much for the support. This battle report is for you. First though, let's take a look at what I'm playing against. So this is my opponent, Kyle's USAriadna Ranger Force list. This is potentially a list for CanCon, and as such, it's built for the CanCon scenarios. The CanCon scenarios this year are heavy on exclusion zones and objective rooms, and this list plays to an objective room mission like the Armory, which is what we're playing today. In particular, what it's doing is it's trading heavily on a large Marauder core. Marauders are a piece that in USAriadna, they occupy sort of like the heavy infantry or the pseudo heavy infantry slot with Dogged and Armor 3, although they're not, I believe, shock immune. And what Kyle has found and what he told me is that he has increasingly been on this journey in USAriadna where the more he looks at profiles with kind of fresh eyes, the more he finds things that are actually really playable outside of the conventional what is good in USAriadna, your desperados, I guess. And Marauders are one of those things. With Dogged and Armor 3, they can be very difficult to put down. And especially those just 22-point pieces where it's rifle, heavy flamethrower, heavy pistol, linkable, that is an absolute nightmare to try and dig out of an objective room once you stack that on top of their forward deployment +4, Dogged and Armor 3. And frankly, at 22 points, some factions will pay more than that just for link filler. This is a pure core, so the Unknown Ranger is going to be Ballistic Skill 16, Burst 5, and the Marauder Sniper Rifle with MSV 1 is going to be Ballistic Skill, I think, 15, Burst 4. That's not an AP sniper, but it's going to have range bands, it can certainly shoot, and the Unknown Ranger will take care of your AP needs for you. So this is an expensive link, but it's not a prohibitively expensive link, and USAriadna can easily fill out 15 troopers into combat groups and still have plenty of luxury pieces thanks to some of the cheap stuff that they have access to. So the list is being rounded out by 2 tractor mules. These are probably the only thing that I don't like. Yes, they're 5 points. Yes, they're cheaper than a net rod. The reason why I don't love tractor mules is that they are strictly a do-nothing piece. They can't fight and they're very hard to defend. Kyle wouldn't struggle to defend them in this game, but if you can find just a few points, you can turn them into grunts. And grunts might actually do something. If nothing else, they'll just stand there with a shotgun, etc. Anyway, we have Van Zant, who is outstanding. We have a Desperado, one of 2, outstanding. There's the second. We have 2 infiltration heavy flamethrower grunts. I'm not sure about these in exclusion zone, exclusion zone, exclusion zone, exclusion zone, exclusion zone as a mission lineup, but you can attempt to just yeet them across the halfway line into your opponent's 4-inch exclusion zone free area if you need to. And failing that, 11 points for a light shotgun heavy flamethrower. Normally the only thing keeping you from taking these is the SWC cost, and this list is swimming in SWC. It's only spending 4, so they can easily be afforded. We have a Devil Dog with K9 Antipode, which is outstanding. We have a Blackjack. Now, a Blackjack is not the best shooter in the game, but for what it costs, it is a perfectly serviceable. Like, it's difficult to find an AP HMG, right? Regular HMGs for less than 40 points, yeah, dime a dozen. AP HMG, even on a profile like the Blackjack, which is only PS13, it degrades, etc., and it has a heavy pistol, quite solid. It can defend itself at close range. Blackjack is not amazing, but for what you are paying, it's totally fine. Hardcase Frontiersman, excellent piece, and that's basically the list. So there's plenty of these like 23 to 38 for the blackjack-ish kind of pieces. Van Zant's 34. You have your luxuries. You have 2 desperados who are excellent, and then you have this big marauder core, which is hoping to do the bulk of the heavy lifting, although how Kyle is going to play it is somewhat expendably, which is perfectly reasonable as befits 22-point pieces. The only thing that we would do sort of to change about this, having now seen how this list played once, the only thing I would change is that this Marauder needs to not be the Lieutenant. I think you need to trim Van Zant back to something like just a regular Airborne Ranger. That frees up a lot of points, and those points can turn the Tractor Mules into grunts, one of which can be the LT, one of which can be a decoy, and it leaves you points to upgrade something else in the list. But you do not really want the Marauder LT to be the LT basically. Whatever it is that you do, even if you would say like take this hardcase frontiersman, take these infiltration grunts, just don't put the LT in the link, because it's these profiles here, it's these heavy flamethrower, heavy pistol rifle profiles in the armory that are looking to hold the armory in the early game. And they would do that. They would turn the armory into an absolute title pit. We'll see that as we begin to play. But having your lieutenant needing to do that with no chain of command, that's the only thing letting this list down. Otherwise, in this scenario, in the armory, or in something like Last Launch or Panic Room, this was cool. I would get more Devil Dogs because I love Devil Dogs. I wouldn't take Van Zant because I don't mind Van Zant. I think he's fine, but he's usually a piece that you cut to free up points. But this is cool, and the fire output of the Unknown Ranger is seriously high watermark. MSV1, Mimetism, BS16, Burst 5, Good Armor, No Wounding Cap, Shock Immune. That is a hell of a piece. Yes, it's expensive, but like, hot damn. So this is very cool, and as we see how it plays, I like the approach as well of eventually budding off the firepower pieces, pulling them back, and then just leaving this death squad up in the middle of the field to be a huge pain. So excited to show you how this plays. Now let's jump into my list, which will feature a Gorgos. So this is my Gorgos list, and to be honest, I'm not going to run through it all. I would actually encourage you to pause the video and read through. This list is called Ethically Sourced Shitposting, and there is a reason for that. Having been playing some Oceania recently, I have found sort of like I'm just a little bit short on close assault elements. I'm not playing NCA, then I don't have access to Auxilla, and I'm trying to do things like play Svalorheimer, and it's just I wanna grapple with things up close. I wanna use terrain and launch close assaults. And so this list is just 18 models with template weapons. Every single trooper in the entire list has some variation of a pulsar, a shotgun, a heavy flamethrower. It's just template weapons for days, and I have 18 models. One of those models, as requested, is the Gorgos. And this is a list, to be perfectly honest, I would probably not play this list outside of the Armory. This list can play the Armory. It has just enough specialists. It has 2 specialists in the list. It has a diplomatic delegate and then the Kael'thar chain of command. But otherwise, it definitely, like, it's got tons of smoke. It can definitely get its way forward. It can fight, but maybe it should be slightly more well-rounded if you were to take this in a more general tournament where you weren't playing, like, this wasn't built just for the Armory. But it was a hell of a lot of fun to play. If I was to adjust this list to be a little more well-rounded, one thing that I have noticed is that it leaves a lot of bodies behind. And I think there's an argument to possibly cut, say, this Rassail, or just find points to get a paramedic. With multiple symbiote armor models and the three Chaxa auxiliars in the list, all of those have got like basically okay physique. Rassails are Phys 11 even when they go down to unconscious. And I think that this list actually would really benefit from just having some mad dude with a medikit running around firing medi-darts into things, if only because it would force your opponent to then spend orders putting down 4-point Chaxas. And that could have been really good. There were multiple occasions, you'll see sort of in the pictures of this game, where there are just bodies everywhere, and having a Ballistic Skill 12 linked paramedic to recover some of those would have been very good. So, not sure how I would necessarily afford it. I don't want to lose chain of command off of the Kael'thar. Honestly, there's not a great deal to cut because I'm running a Gorgos. I could cut the Gorgos, but then it would be a different list. But that would be something I might try to find points for if I was to run this again. Otherwise, this list is my retox after playing Oceania a bunch, at request of a number of channel supporters. Apparently there are a ton of people who want to see Oceania games. This list is the palate cleanser going back to the things that I like, which are egregious and disgusting close assault elements. So, with the 2 lists introduced, let's look at the table and play the game. So here's our table. We have the Tohaa on the left and the USAriadna Ranger Force on the right. I've won the role to pick initiative in this case, and I have chosen to deploy second on this side. The sides are actually pretty similar. I went with the one that I felt gave me better access into the armory, which would be useful and would matter over the course of the game. But really, I just wanted to force Kyle to probably go first, because I wanted to go second, because in this kind of scenario, Tohaa is quite good at going second. It is basically impossible to keep Tohaa from laying down Eclipse Smoke. It is their biggest strength as a faction, or one of their biggest strengths. And if they can lay down enough Eclipse Smoke, they can always get into a zone. And because they can always get into a zone, then it's just a matter of clearing that zone and having enough points there. So they are very good at playing a scrappy scenario game if just annihilation is not an option. Kyle, however, cheerfully went first because he had a plan for doing so, which was very cool, and his deployment was thus. The Marauder link is deployed around here, making good use of forward deployment +4. The Sniper is prone here, not willing to stand just yet because he doesn't know what I'm doing, and he is, after all, going first. And then we have 1, 2, 3 Marauders with various different guns. So with the rifles, rifles, heavy pistols, and flamethrowers. And then the Unknown Ranger is deployed there. The Blackjack would be the reserve on this building here. It's looking to see down some of these lines here, but mostly it's looking to see into the objective room. We are playing the objective room as see into or out of, but not through. But although all of the doors in the objective room are narrow gates, what he is doing is the actual physical size of the gate, because this is a Corvus Belli room, is these gates on the left and right, as you see them, facing the deployment zones, are relatively large. And what that means is that the Blackjack is going to have pretty ample line of sight into the room. He could enter suppressive fire or otherwise just present his heavy machine gun as an ARO, threatening this space, which is good. We have Desperados deployed here and here. Both of them are impetuous. And then we have the tractor mules just sort of like hanging out in the back, in the rear with the gear as far away as possible. And then infiltrating grunts really just +4 inches. One of them is here, and then one of them is on a rooftop somewhere. I can't remember where. Otherwise, we have the hard case in this position here. So we have irregulars in position to attack up this alleyway, and then the big Marauder core is positioned to storm the objective. The Devil Dog is deployed here, so it will be able to move into the objective room as well, where it can provide smoke or potentially clear my mines or other things that I'm presenting to sort of lock down the room. The HVT is here, and then this is 15 models. But because of how much this looks like a hard case, and because I expect a hard case, because hard cases are really quite good, I'm assuming that Van Zandt is going to turn up, and indeed he will later in the game. For my part, I have more or less totally null deployed. Oh, sorry, last thing, we have a turret. Kyle's defensive turret is deployed down here. Now I have basically totally null deployed because that's what my list wants to do. It has 18 models with template weapons, 2 models with ferroware plus 2 symbio bombs, plenty of wounds. It's got chain of command in case lieutenant gets got. I am happy to invite Kyle to sort of like dare he enter my magical realm. I will even wear assaults from things like Desperados if I have to. That's fine. There's very little that he can truly efficiently trade into me without egregious armor rolls. And if he spends all his orders doing that, that's okay. Another thing is, I suspect he will attempt to open the Armory. Opening the Armory on the first turn as the first player is actually something that I sometimes choose not to do. The reason is, I have found there is a little bit of a second mouse gets the cheese phenomenon in the Armory, where it kind of takes orders to open the Armory gates. Many lists can't do it like particularly efficiently, and if you leave it to your opponent to open the Armory gates, yes, they will then have the first chance to score, but they'd have the first chance to score anyway. The Armory is not scored until the end of the second player's first turn as the first instance of scoring, and if you open the gates, you just make it easier for them to get in. So if you spend all of your first turn attacking your opponent rather than doing any objectives in the Armory, it can actually set you up to kind of a good long-term situation. However, Kyle has a plan for opening the Armory gates quite quickly, totally alright, and frankly, if I was him, I would not want to attack aggressively into my list anyway. It sounds kind of nightmarish. His plan is actually a pretty good one, so what does he do? Well, first let's go through my deployment. In my case, we've just set up template hell everywhere. There's a McCall link team over here, there's a McCall link team over here, there's a Rassel over here, and a Rassel over here. I'm aware of Van Zandt, so my deployment zone lines are basically all watched, including by this bounty hunter over here. The motorized bounty hunter is watching these table edges. He's up against the corner so that he can't be flanked. This is the only way to get a large base model seeing multiple table edges, otherwise they're a bit too fat. We've got Chaxas here, we've got another Chaxa hanging out on this stairwell here. We've got 2 specialists. So the 2 specialists that we have is we have one back here, which is the Kael'tar Specialist Chain of Command. I paid for Chain of Command just so I had one of those, and so I had a second Specialist, and then the Diplomatic Delegate. They're not positioned ideally to run at the Armory, but they aren't bad either. The Delegate is the one who will do it if she survives, and Kyle doesn't open the gates for me. But between the delegate here and my lieutenant tack-wheel officer here, we've got a big series of ferroware bubbles that any attacks through really any of these lines is going to be kind of a pain. Otherwise, we have the Libertos deployed down here and the Libertos mine there, ready to detonate into the armory. Wow. If need be. And then the Gorgos is my reserve, and it will deploy here with its Chaxa hanging out up here. I'm just a little bit concerned about like a devil dog yeeting over this parapet and getting into my lieutenant. So the Chaxa is just there hanging out, kind of prone, but the main thing is that anything that's big enough to go over this parapet with super jump, the Chaxa will see. So I'm fully intending to punish any approach up this direction just to disincentivize it, and the Chaxa is fast enough that it can easily come down and around that way later in the game if need be. So Kyle goes first, and a surprisingly large number of the things he has that I'm scared of are in Combat Group 2, but it's only got the 5 orders. I like to strip orders, 1 order from each group, since I think 1 order out of Combat Group 2 is enough to nullify any serious threat that it poses. Kyle begins by doing some Impetuous, and we have a little bit of bad luck. This bike comes around here, and that's totally okay, just sets up to move up and contest the Armory, but this bike will come out and around here, and it has to move through line of fire of the Gorgos. It's a terrible range. It's at like 33 inches for the Flamen Spear, which puts me in -3, but I nail him with the Flamen Spear, and that puts 1 model down out the gate in the Impetuous order, in the Impetuous phase, which I'm pretty happy with. Kyle's plan, otherwise, I quite like, and it's pretty much all predicated around this Marauder core. The Unknown Ranger just immediately moves straight up to the objective room, opens the gates on the first try, and then they delta split into the room. And what the actual plan here and how the turn will end is with the Marauder flamethrowers guarding the room aggressively, being points, just enough points in the zone, but with the guns pulling back. So before we get there, up and into the room, the Devil Dogs follow around and clear out the mine. The poor K9 Antipode loses its life, clearing out the Libertos mine. And then the Unknown Ranger basically breaks across cover here and has a big engagement with the Gorgos. Fortunately, I do not just lose the Gorgos in one order like I did to the poor Yotam in the last battle report. There's a big exchange of fire. The Unknown Ranger is heavily favored, but it is just an AP Spitfire, and the Gorgos is armor 7, so down to 4 from the AP. A bunch of shots get through. The Gorgos takes 1 wound and then just gutters the heck out of there. Gutters into total cover. I'm fine with that. I really don't want to fight the Unknown Ranger now that he's moved up and committed. There is a bit more like movement around. The Desperado moves up to here, but it's very difficult for Kyle to aggressively attack into any of this. The Ferroware Tohaa versus Ariadna is always going to be a fairly good matchup for Tohaa just in a mechanical sense. And any aggressive push here is probably going to see Kyle trading more expensive pieces for cheaper ones. So what he does is he then just falls back on what his plan was for this game, which is the Gorgos is suppressed, everything is suppressed, he does not want to attack into my deployment zone, so he opens a bunch of panoplies. I think he pulls a heavy machine gun for a Marauder out of one of these panoplies, and then he splits the link team and pulls back with the guns a long way. I don't actually remember where the multi-sniper got back to, but it went like well back. I think it actually might have ended up back prone on this rooftop or something like that. The Unknown Ranger pulls all the way back and around to up here, and what he does is he leaves the Marauders inside the room with the Devil Dog in just Haris link, effectively. A 3-person link is totally fine for short-range gunfighting with heavy pistols, flamethrowers, and rifles, and they're set up in like these kind of situations here and here and here, which is going to make attacking into them, well, I am playing Tohaa, so it's quite doable, but punishing, right? Punishing if I want to, or if you just want to launch a conventional assault on this room. The Devil Dog is also in the room, ready to provide smoke, and that's basically his turn. I think the only other notable thing that happens is that he does suppress my turret, and he has a look for trying to bring on Van Zant, but he can't find a place. So I've lost effectively nothing, just materiel. 1 wound off of the Gorgos, the turret, the Libertos mine, and Kyle has very helpfully opened the armory for me, and yes, he's begun to loot it, but we're in position now to do what we want to do, which is seize the armory. Now, there are 2 plays that I can make, and one of them is kind of objectively correct. What I should definitely have done, I didn't, but I should have, is gotten some smoke down here, because there is sort of like there's this turret there and there's the blackjack there. Gotten some smoke down in this position so that my lieutenant can crawl down here, move up to this position here, and then just start brain blasting everything in the room for every order that I have in that combat group. And only once that was done should I do anything. I didn't do that, and I didn't do that mostly because I wanted to play with Rasail boarding teams. I wanted to use them first. This was purely a, I have taken a model in this list and I want to use it, damn it. That does not make it a good play. I'm playing Tohaa against Ariadna in an objective room scenario. I should have ferrowared the absolute bejesus out of them first. I didn't. That's fine. That's on me. So we make a Rasail assault, and we actually make assaults with both Rasails. So the Rasail that is deployed down here moves up in under cover of smoke, provided helpfully by the lieutenant. Even if he's not climbing down doing what he should be doing, he's able to put smoke down in useful places. I actually come around, the Gorgos comes around, and the Peripheral comes around to see the Devil Dog. I actually pistol the Devil Dog, but he gets smoke down for me. And the Rasail barges into the room. I get some supplementary smoke from the LT. And my plan is, because the Blackjack's got a lot of Overwatch into this space, my plan is actually to push through Kyle's smoke and my smoke and end up in a situation here where I can just start trading with everything using my Symbiomate, Symbiobomb, Flamethrower, Shotgun, etc. Now what actually happens is that I'm able to use a Symbiobomb to put this Marauder into Dogged, and then the bastard dodges into CC with me while I'm moving. And the decision that I make is, okay, I'm going to leave him there, he'll die at the end of the round. I will just move my other Rasail up and I will do the same thing. So this Rasail comes up and around and launches around here a very similar kind of assault. And it's at this point that the quality of the Marauders basically shows themselves. High Fizz, template weapons, Dogged, it's just very difficult to attack this. And even if I had been using like my Ferroware, I would have had to put them all into Dogged and then just kind of like bomb the room. So we seize in through this doorway, we push the Unknown Ranger back with a Libertos. There's a ton of fighting. I actually lose a Chaxa, and I'm able to Dogged out a couple, I think all of the Marauders in the room. The Devil Dog dodges into CC with the Rasail, so both Rasails are now engaged, but I do kill the Desperado that's hanging out here, the two Marauders that are in the room, and I engage the Devil Dog. And I have to kind of just call it a day there because too much of my stuff is in melee. And unlike hacking, one of the few mechanical weaknesses of Ferroware is that it's difficult to do Ferroware into CC, because it's a ballistic skill attack, it costs the -6, and if you miss your attack, you'll hit your friend. So I'm not keen on rolling 2 dice on 8s and just blasting my own Rasail if I miss, so I just leave the Rasails in CC, noting that at least one of the Marauders will go Dogged and die, which will leave me points in the zone. So at the end of this round, I am going to seize the zone. The Rasail boarding teams will do their boarding team thing and burn their way through, and that will give me the first 2 points on the board as Kyle moves into his second turn. So slightly blurry picture, but you can see already the kind of like pile of corpses that is arising around here. We have my lieutenant has moved down and around here and actually done a little bit of Ferroware, finally acknowledging that it's the play I should have made from the beginning. But we have this Rasail in CC with a Devil Dog. We have another Rasail down here with his friend bot here. One thing to note about the Rasail assault is that I had some fairly shocking dice, and both Rasails have been wounded through their symbiomates just by like random damage 13 hits, which is a bit of a shame, but it is what happens. They have 3 wounds. They're fine for this. But the violence really is escalating in this spot. If Kyle had not taken a Lieutenant Marauder and used it in that aggressive seize the territory kind of role, I think he would actually be in a pretty serviceable position right now. He would be able to do things like move the Unknown Ranger around here, kill this Rasail really comfortably, just by using the burst bonus in CC, move in on the other ones, etc., use the Devil Dog. But because his plan was contingent on using the Marauders to hold this space, and one of the Marauders was his lieutenant and I killed it, he's in loss of lieutenant this turn. So he's very limited in how much he can accomplish. He does manage to actually kill. He kills this Rasail, just beats it to death with the Devil Dog. He forces this Rasail out of the objective room and leaves it badly wounded, hanging out here. I'm able to save it because every time the Devil Dog activates to belt this Rasail in CC, I'm able to throw down smoke templates in ARO with my lieutenant, which is one of I love tack wheel officers. I love that they can do that. And that gives this Rasail a dodge out of the room and into smoke. But this Rasail will die, this Chaxa over here will die, this leaving just one Chaxa Auxilla still alive. Chucks a peripheral, sorry. But although Kyle will make a game attempt, he'll also move the Unknown Ranger up to engage the Gorgos a second time since it's moved out. He will not wound it, will he? No, he will actually, sorry, he will engage it twice because the position that I've moved it to take some face-to-face rolls has left it unable to guts back to total cover. He will engage it twice and actually put the Gorgos down to transmuted. So he will do 2 more wounds to the Gorgos, which will kill the symbiote armor. At that point, it can guts prone and out of line of sight, but he will basically drop it. Which, all things considered, is a pretty good effort for a loss of lieutenant turn, but that's the limit of what he can do. He does sensibly pull the Unknown Ranger back up and around here, gets it back into a prone position, because the Unknown Ranger is a very important piece for him to try and sort of survive. The Unknown Ranger is wounded after an engagement with the turret from the beginning of the game. But I'm going to be able to basically repeat what I did the last time around. I've got my lieutenant in position with Ferroware, and he wasn't able to kill that. He might have been able to had he not been elusive lieutenant. And so the lieutenant basically is just going to try and put down the devil dog, and he will do so using Ferroware. And then I'm going to smoke out the room and just rush into it. The McCall team over here will be the ones that will do that. I will actually this blasted little turret is going to kill, firing at long range in cover, the Kael'thas specialist, but the McCalls are all that I need. They get into the room, they throw smoke, they spend 4 orders trying to open boxes and only manage to pull 1 thing out of a panoply, which ties up the score there, but they are in the zone and therefore worth points. And because I've killed the things of Kyle's in the zone, the Unknown Ranger has wisely pulled back. That will net me points at the end of the round for the second time in a row. The only other thing that happens this round is that I get a little bit more smoke down, and the Libertos comes out and around here and engages the Unknown Ranger. And they go back and forth for multiple orders before the Unknown Ranger eventually dodges into CC, and I just leave the Libertos there. The Unknown Ranger is very good at killing the Libertos because he has a T2 weapon, but I'm not willing to put any more effort into that, and it will just be my problem to deal with next turn. I'm well up on scenario now with 4 points in the bag, and Kyle has only 1 turn left to play. So heading into the final turn, Kyle finally brings Van Zant on, and he brings him on over here, using just the regular parachutist rule, plus the you can deploy into contact with an exclusion zone parachutist rule in ITS, in the current ITS season. And Van Zant comes on behind this little building here, walks out and around, and he puts 3 rounds rapid into this diplomatic delegate, and then Discover shoots to clear off the mine that the Unknown Ranger is at the base of the Unknown Ranger's staircase. The Unknown Ranger then stabs the Libertos to death and makes a rush on the objective, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. He's actually able to dodge into the room, but in terms of like things that are watching this space, we have the McCalls here now. This Rassail is still alive with its shotgun, and really all he can do is move up and then dodge in and hope to survive the next turn. This Marauder actually does something similar. So the Blackjack, you can actually, I didn't mention this last turn, but the Gorgos has just moved up to hide. This is the Gorgos pilot, and she's just hiding sort of behind this wall here. She has plans for this turn, but she has yeeted her peripheral forward, and it takes 2 orders for Kyle to put the peripheral down with the Blackjack that he does. The Blackjack will then also move out and around, and will kill this Rassail, but all of this is taking a bunch of orders, and what that basically leaves Kyle in a situation is, after all of this business over here, is basically just dodging the Unknown Ranger into the room and then dodging a Marauder into the room as well to get past these flamethrower cordons. And that leaves at the end of Kyle's last turn, we have the Unknown Ranger and the Marauder, and I have 2 Gorgos. And at that juncture, it's actually a very, very simple play for me to make to seal out the scenario. The tack wheel officer puts down some smoke there, and then the Gorgos pilot walks into the room. And although I say Gorgos pilot, it is the Gorgos, and she is worth, I think, 67 points by herself because she is just a transmuted version of the Gorgos. In she goes, and that gives me comfortably enough points in the room. She also pulls something out of the zone. She pulls +1 armor out of one of the panoplies, which puts me over the line on panoplies as well. And then the last thing that happens is that this McCall assault team, which has been hanging out back here the entire game, throws a whole bunch of smoke and runs forward just so that the Kael'thas specialist can get into base contact with a downed hard case and just score the classified, that is, get a model of a chain of command into base-to-base contact with an enemy in a null state. And so that puts me on 10 points. Kyle is securing the HVT for 1, which is a decisive Tohaa victory. Now, yes, I won that game pretty decisively, but I do think that the plan that Kyle has is good and would work quite well against like almost anything except Tohaa, where there's so much close assault, it's so good, the Ferroware is so good against Ariadna in particular. With a little bit more practice and some slight refinement to the list, I think the idea is actually really cool as an armory kind of play. For my part, there we go. I've put that Gorgos model on the table finally. I've had that painted for a long time, and it's been a very long time since I've used it. I am not 100% sure that I agree with the idea that it plays into Tohaa's strengths. I can see where that perspective comes from, and I don't think it's wrong. I think the Gorgos is just like an upscaled version of many of the best things about Tohaa. Tohaa peripherals are fantastic. They're difficult to fit in the list, but they're very, very good. The every Chaxa peripheral is amazing. The Gorgos is totally fine. It's not terribly statted. Its ballistic skill is only 14, its armor is only 7. It's got a few things it's paying for that bulk the price a little bit, and of course the fact that it's a transmuting symbio armor model rather than a tag who can eject a specialist to do an objective then get back in is a problem, but that has its upsides. Like we saw this game, the Gorgos pilot actually is pretty jacked. The fact that she can continue fighting, she still has tack awareness, and she's still worth all of her points, in some scenarios can really matter. Basically the problem with the Gorgos is really just that it's bloody challenging to fit 71 points of model into a Tohaa list, where Tohaa have so many pieces in the 20 to 30 to 35 point range that you can absolutely build a list around, and which are just best in class. Like Sookwhale Commandos, Tackwheel Officers, Jan Star, like even Rassails. There are so many things that you can take that cost just enough points. You can get an entire Tohaa 15 trooper army with some cheap models and then all of these awesome like 20 to 30 point things. But as soon as you try and include a 70 point model, you have to trim and cut and you begin to tear down the core capability of the list. And what that means is that, like, my take on a Gorgos list, for example, is something that just accepts the fact that you are giving up all of the classical, like, linked gunfighting utility, one gun, one specialist, one McCall, like link team situation, and leans into the other facets of the faction. And I think that was very cool and it was very fun, but it's also the kind of list that I would really only play in a scenario like the Armory. It was nevertheless very enjoyable, and I might try a list like this again that just gives up a few things in exchange for a heavy focus on paramedics, because those Chaxa in particular are surprisingly easy to res with paramedics if you're in the neighborhood. And so that is a version of a list I would like to try. It probably has to cut the Gorgos to fit more conventional Tohaa things, because what you need is those Sakiel paramedics in link teams, which means you need link teams, which means you need Sookwhales and McCalls, etc. So it probably pushes the Gorgos out, but I think I can still do something with the force reconstitution and the peripherals. That is one of the things I like about Tohaa. So that concludes today's battle report. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what I do and would like to support the channel, you can do so via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed this, and as always, I will see you next time.